Section 39 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria grants freedom of expression to every citizen of the country. But now the Vice President has said, and I quote, "The intimidation of the population by words or speech is an act of terrorism," end of quote. Talking about the definition of hate speech has caused divergent views from lawyers and Nigerians as a whole. Also, the wading in of the army or the military to monitor the social media with intention of curbing hate speech has also gotten Nigerians talking. Where should the line be drawn between the right of expression and hate speech? Well, that forms a part of our focus on this episode of Big Story. I'm Ini John Mekwa.
The language of interaction, the language of exchange must be civil. We must not permit a situation where people talk anyhow. Whether they are leaders or elders, we must not tolerate a situation where people are allowed to speak in any manner that they desire.
It was at the National Economic Council retreat on national security that the Vice President gave the definition of hate speech, which the government may be working with. He began by saying that terrorism, as it is defined popularly, is the unlawful use of violence or intimidation against individuals or groups, especially for political ends. The law, that is the Terrorism Prevention Act 2011 as amended, defines terrorism inter alia, an act which deliberately done with malice, which may seriously harm or damage a country or seriously intimidate a population.
The truth of the matter is that
for the Vice President, words and speeches with this intention can now be categorized into terrorism acts. This has birthed discussions on what should be considered as the acceptable definition of hate speech in Nigeria.
Anything that advocates or discriminates on the basis of tribe, language, religion can be said to be hate speech, because if you go to the advanced democracies, they try to be politically correct, so you cannot call somebody a nigger, you cannot say somebody is a Muslim, you can't say this guy is a gay, so they try to manage all those things because they feel that it puts the person down. In a democracy, the freedom of speech is guaranteed. What the military authorities are trying to do is like taking about 3 or 4 steps backward. As far as 1985, the Court of Appeal in the case of Otto Nwako's case abolished sedition, which would normally have been covered by this kind of thing in our laws. If the Court of Appeal deemed it fit that it is not relevant because there are a lot of other remedies under our laws, under which you can, anybody that is aggrieved can seek solace to redress their grievances. So we're not in a dictatorship, and any attempt by anybody in a democracy to impose such a law will amount to silencing alternative, I will not say opposition, alternative views.
I have a right to be aggrieved. So does any other person. I have a right to look at my people from my place, and I speak for my people. I have a right to look at my religious position and speak about that. I have a right to look at my sexual orientation and speak about that. I have a right to look at the attitude towards family life and speak about that. Those are within the definitions of what you call areas under which hate speech can come in. But I also have a responsibility to understand that whatever I say would affect other people's sensibilities. To elevate hate speech to the national conversation in the absence of a law or in the absence of regulations that provide both the monitoring, the supervision, and execution is actually in itself also irresponsible. So how do you define a hate speech? Is it what the government interprets to be a hate speech? Or what's common law defines for what to be a hate speech? At least I should know before we have that conversation. So it's we should not confuse this larger conversation about hate speech with the intentions and larger objective of what the military should focus on.
The military has taken up the issue and they say their approach will be to monitor the social media. In an interview on Sunrise Daily on Channels Television, the Chief of Defense Information, Major General John Enenche, revealed their approach. In the military, we are now taking it on more seriously than ever. We have our strategic media centers that monitor the social media to be able to sieve out and react to all the ones that will be anti-government, anti-military, and anti-security.
Responses are surveillance and then to be proactive in preparation and making our plans in case of trouble that we need to back up the police and other security agencies. We have Strategic Media Center. And Strategic Media Center monitors the media. Simple. And it's like that all over the world. And we take that because it helps us in gathering information to transform them into intelligence to enable us to prepare for whatever call-up that will be called upon or whatever directive will be given. Why was I trained for 31 years? 34 years plus my cadet days. Why were we trained? We are trained to do threat analysis. Anything that would threaten the security of this country. So it is part of our threat analysis. Every day we do the threat analysis. Any person can interpret it to mean that it's a follow-up to the speech of the vice president, then acting president, and then the minister of interior. That person can be right. Where do we take instructions from? Where do we take, get information from? One thing leads to the other.
This has generated various emotions from Nigerians.
In terms of monitoring, oh yes, we need to do so, because that's the only way people are really going to feel safe. Somebody is inciting somebody in the north, another person is inciting somebody in the east. We want to secede, we want this. No, this should not be tolerated, and in my opinion should be dealt with, so the government needs to be aware of it.